You are all very welcome to our event this morning, and thank you for taking the time out to be with us. If you wish to join the conversation online, our hashtag is TU Dublin Innovation, all one word. So my name is David Gardner, and I am a licensing executive with TU Dublin Hothouse. TU Dublin Hothouse is the award-winning knowledge transfer and incubation centre at Technological University Dublin. Following on from our recent TU Dublin Open Labs anniversary event, TU Dublin Hothouse are delighted to announce a new series of events showcasing research across the university as part of TU Dublin Open Labs. Now, Open Labs is a TU Dublin Hothouse market-focused initiative set up to lower the barriers for industry engagement, thereby opening up the world-leading facilities and expertise to industry and companies. Open Labs assist companies working in or interested in the areas of food innovation, product prototyping, virtual reality and augmented reality, the Internet of Things, data analysis for business, and artificial intelligence, innovative surface coatings, and sustainable infrastructure. So quite the variety there. And Open Labs provides excellent results delivered at the pace and quality expected by industry. So our first event this morning features Dr. Brian Vaughn from the Virtual Interactive Research Lab, VIRAL. Now, VIRAL specialises in virtual and augmented reality research, innovation, and industry collaboration. Dr. Vaughn and our guest Jackie Carroll from GIA will discuss cutting-edge virtual and augmented reality research, development, and collaboration at VIRAL. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Brian Vaughn, who is the founder and director of VIRAL. Brian, over to you.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. So my presentation, I'm going to give you an overview, just a very brief overview of what the lab does, and going to focus on 4 case studies just to kind of give you an idea of the kind of range of projects that we work on and just the process that we go through. So my name is Brian. I founded the lab about 3 years ago in collaboration with David and Hothouse. We recognized from a research point of view, but also from an industry needs point of view, that there was going to be a big upsurge in interest in this technology. From my own point of view, I was very interested in research that I saw that was going on and the potential for this technology, mixed reality, including virtual and augmented reality, to provide immersive, engaging experiences that can be used across a number of domains. So it's fundamentally an applied research lab. Everything we do has a very kind of applied aspect to it. We engage in a number of industry collaborations. We have our own internal PhD research going on in a number of areas. The lab is also a development space for mixed reality projects. So it's a space for anyone in TU Dublin who are working on or interested in mixed reality to come and try things out, and companies as well. As part of our industry collaborations, the space and the technology is there for companies to try these things out. And it's also a testing space. It's also a testing space. You need large open spaces in many cases to try and trial some of these virtual reality experiences. So why collaborate with us? In a nutshell, as broadly as I can. Well, we've got the pedagogical expertise. So what we always try to do is bring as much of our research experience, ability, and findings into our industry collaborations, and vice versa. Everything we learn from our collaborations with various companies and industries, we bring back into research. So it's a symbiotic relationship. We have expertise in user interaction design across a range of virtual modalities. We have experience in instructional design, in game design, and this is primary and core to a lot of what we do, is that game designers and developers are very, very good at getting people engaged and interested in what they do. Just by the very nature of what they're doing, they're very, very good at that. And we incorporate elements of that into what we do, so that it's not just about creating a virtual simulation or creating an app or creating something that's useful or needed by an industry, but it's also engaging and interesting, that it grabs the users, as opposed to being just another thing that they might have to use, or that, just another kind of tool or something that they're not as excited or as engaged about. We also have expertise in sound design. One of the primary aspects and most important aspects, I would say, about, say virtual reality training simulations, which I'll talk a little bit about, is it doesn't really come alive until there's sound in there. So if you're building a training simulation, you need to have that sound exactly as the environment that you're trying to simulate. So sound design is vitally important, because nothing in the virtual world has any presence or weight or existence until it sounds like the object that you were trying to recreate. We also have experience in asset modeling, and our main development engine is Unity. So we combine all these elements that we teach. We teach at undergrad level, master's level, and PhD level. And we combine these to deliver immersive, engaging, and effective mixed reality experiences. So absolutely, research in mixed reality requires, it's not even a case of, oh, it's nice to do, it requires strong collaboration and links between academia and industry. In many areas, industry is forging ahead with adopting mixed reality technologies in a range of areas and innovating and making very interesting findings, finding all sorts of interesting uses for them, and likewise in academia in similar and different ways. So that collaboration is what is absolutely fundamentally needed. So this is why the lab has a very open remit to collaboration with industry. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the collaborations that we've worked on, so you get an idea of how it works and our process, and the outcomes ultimately is what most people are interested in. So some of the projects we worked on and some of the projects we're working on at the moment. We worked with Intel to develop virtual reality simulation training for their fab facility down in Leixlip. I would love nothing more to be able to talk in detail about that. It was a very interesting project with a lot of fantastic outcomes. I can't talk about that in any detail whatsoever. We are working with a company called Servier down in Arklow for developing pharmaceutical simulation training. We worked with a company called Miglu to develop augmented reality mobile application for product visualization. Our latest project that we just finished, the main phase of, was with Biopharma Chem Skillnet, which was developing VR aseptic technique simulation training, and that's one of the case studies I'll talk about. We previously worked with Guinness Storehouse developing a mobile app for augmented reality for cultural heritage. We worked with Genie in a headset, and Jackie thankfully is here today to talk in detail about that, where we worked in collaboration to develop VR meditation and visualization. We worked with Matter Private on a virtual reality operating room fire safety simulation training. We worked with an Irish company, In-Flight Dublin, developing an augmented reality mobile application for e-commerce. And one of our kind of latest projects, research projects, was a virtual reality Irish language learning app, which provided a lot of very interesting outputs that we have brought into the projects that we worked on. So it's a good example of that dichotomous relationship between industry and academia. So I'll get straight into the showcases, because I think that's really the most interesting part and gives the most information and overview of what we're about. So the four kind of areas I'm going to focus on for the next while are the Biopharma project, the Guinness Storehouse project, the Matter Private project, and the In-Flight Dublin project. So 2 virtual reality, 2 augmented reality. I'd just like to make the point that the term mixed reality is used as a broad term to encompass virtual reality and augmented reality, but it is also a distinct area in and of itself. So mixed reality would be an extension of augmented reality, where you would use quite powerful headsets like the HoloLens 2 to provide very detailed interactive augmented reality, essentially. The great thing, I suppose, for industry in that case is something like the HoloLens 2 is pretty much ready to go out of the box. You can be up and running with that very, very quickly. You can use that in a myriad of ways, so it's a fantastic tool in that sense. We have our own kind of internal mixed reality research projects that are ongoing at the moment. And a lot of what we do for virtual reality projects can be used in mixed reality environments. The underlying technology, the underlying methodologies are the same or complementary. So a lot of the time that we found, certainly with some of the larger collaborations, is the work done on the VR side can actually be leveraged and used for mixed reality applications. So the 4 showcases, or the 4 projects I'm going to focus on today, showcase VR and AR. So the Matter Private was to develop operating room fire safety simulation training. So OR fires are very rare but deadly occurrences. Not something that's going to happen regularly. You might not ever come across one. Thankfully, hopefully, fingers crossed. But if they do happen, they're extremely dangerous. And OR staff have to be trained in this, and they are trained regularly in this to prepare for this situation if it does arrive. The kind of goal of this was to kind of put staff who, again, might not have ever experienced one, might never experience one, within a realistic simulation of an OR fire in a safe environment. Because ultimately, one of the benefits of the VR environment is you can make as many mistakes as you want, and it's a safe environment. And if it's designed properly, you will learn a lot from your mistakes. So what we always are very clear about when we are developing these things is it's not about, you know, people getting things right all the time. It's putting people in the environment, and before they even, I suppose, engage with the learning outcomes or the objectives, is being able to explore the environment in a way that makes sense to them. So in this case, the environment, the operating room, was modeled on one of the operating rooms in the Matter Private. So we had the plan, and we were able to create a very detailed virtual replica of the room. And the reason for that was so that they be in a familiar environment. One of the things about VR is that there's a certain training element to it, in that people need to spend a little bit of time in it to get familiar with how you move around. And you can kind of mitigate or shorten that training period by putting people in environments that are as close as possible to a familiar environment in the real world. So there was a number of things in this virtual experience. It wasn't just putting people in a room and setting it on fire virtually. They had to follow a number of prescribed training steps called the RACE protocol. And this simulation, it wasn't designed to replace the training that they underwent. It wasn't designed to, you know, get rid of the kind of paper-based training or the instructional-based training or the chalk and talk. It was very much designed to complement that. So it would fit in and slot into the training pipeline that was in place already. And this is something that we always reiterate with anything that we do around simulation training, is that it's should never replace. VR isn't at the stage where it can replace, and you can do away with all your other training methodology that's been built up over years or decades. It fits into that, and it should complement it and augment it as opposed to replace. So on screen here, you can see some of the screenshots from the environment here. The user has to do things like rescue the patient, raise the alarm, close all the doors. They have to do it in a certain order, and they are graded on that. So at the end of it there, they get a score on the whiteboard in terms of, did they do things properly? Did they rescue the patient? Did they close the doors? Did they activate the alarm? Did they put the fire out, or did they escape? So that E in RACE is, you know, escape or extinguish, depending on the situation. What was interesting from this was, even if people didn't get to complete this in time, we designed it so that the room would fill up with virtual smoke within 2 minutes, which is a realistic representation of what happens. So working with the Matter, working with the fire safety trainers, you know, the feedback from that was the operating rooms will fill up within about 2 minutes, and the simulation has to accurately represent that. And one of the main takeaways from staff was, even if they didn't finish completing the RACE protocol, was it was useful just to be able to stand in a room and see how quickly it fills up with smoke, and see how quickly you get disorientated, even in virtual space, and not know where the door is or how to get out. And obviously, it's in a completely safe environment, but to be able to put in that situation that you couldn't be put in the real world. You can't put someone in a room, fill it with smoke, and say, there you go. Isn't that really bad? You'd hate to be in that situation in real life. So one of the takeaways from that was, just by being in that situation and seeing how precarious it is, there was a lot of learning that was taken away by anyone who engaged with that experience. The other project I want to talk about is one we did for in-flight entertainment. So this was AR functionality, adding it to existing in-flight services, and it was a mobile-based augmented reality experience on Apple's iOS and Android, and on tablet and phone. So it could be deployed across pretty much any device anyone might have, with the caveat that they had to have a phone that could run AR. And interestingly, at the time, not every phone would. There was a limit. I think it was they needed an iPhone 6 at very least, and I don't know what model of Android was the minimum, but certainly there was a minimum Android operating system release that they had to have. Within the period of time since that project, pretty much every phone can run AR now without a second thought. But the fact that it was designed for tablet and phone, we designed 2 user interfaces for both for tablet and phone, just to ensure the best experience on either one, and meant that it could be utilized across as wide a range of devices as possible. And the way this worked was, or the concept behind it, because it was very much a kind of prototype to see how this could be utilized within the confines of a cramped space, relatively cramped space on an airplane. And the idea was to have a logo on the seat tray that when you pointed your phone at with the app, this would display the content. So we are fortunate enough, given the kind of broad remit within TU Dublin, the broad range of activities and research and teaching that goes on, that we have a section that deals with aviation maintenance, and they were able to give us some airliner chairs and seats, and we were able to test and determine the best kind of arrangement for holding the phone and testing the size of the content, and test it in as real an environment as we're able to. And the point of the app was to access a range of services that were already available. So, services for in-flight entertainment across a number of areas, and also kind of design it in a modular way such that other content could be dropped in on top, such as AR-based games. One of the kind of interesting things that was tried in this, that was incorporated, was this idea of try before you buy. So virtual try before you buy for duty-free items, and in particular watches, so that the user could put a virtual watch on their wrists and look at it and get a sense of what it would look like on them, so that they could then take the step to buying that. Now, this is a screenshot here. Very simple, minimal interface, as you should have in AR, but you can see, for example, the tray there with the logo that activates it. And in this case here, it's a simple little paper band put on the wrist, and when you point the app at it, it overlays the watch. So this is a video, very brief video, just showcases some of the main features, but you'll actually see the watch element appearing on the wrist in video, and you can see it's quite robust. Even as you rotate your wrist or rotate it, the strap, you'll see that it still keeps the tracking. So it enables the user to try the watch, put it on, and move their wrist around to a certain degree to kind of get a sense of the look and feel of it. So that was a mobile-based project, and provided quite a wide range of services and interactions in an augmented reality environment. The third one I want to talk about, it's a little different. It's a very interesting one, though. It was to do with cultural heritage, so something we collaborated on with Guinness Storehouse, because Guinness has a deep and long history with Dublin and various elements of cultural heritage across the city and the country. And the idea was to design and build an augmented reality mobile application for use on a St. Patrick's Day walking tour. And again, this is on iOS and Android, on phone and tablet. And the point of it was to showcase some of the rich historical content contained in the Guinness Storehouse archive. So there's fantastic stuff up in those archives, and it was to make some of this a little bit more accessible in a way that complemented, this very successful, highly popular walking tour. And the point of it was to make the kind of beginning and the end of the tour enable an augmented reality aspect to those. And the start of the tour was at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and the end of it was at the Open Gate Brewery, or the OGB, on Thomas Street. So they were the kind of two areas where augmented reality content could be experienced. And again, like VR simulation training, this is something that very much was designed in the truest sense to augment what was happening, again, not to replace. So the tour guide would give the extensive detail and history, and this was kind of brought to life through AR. And then we had other little elements as well. So the tour map as well a little augmented reality elements to it as well, just to kind of further engage people on the walking tour. So in this case, there were two triggers. The St. Patrick's Cathedral has a number of these beautiful crests on various points on the gates, and this was the trigger for the first point of the walking tour, the start of it. And then the Open Gate Brewery was the kind of second trigger. And what we did was we looked at the kind of range of content that's in there and picked the content that, you know, in collaboration with the Guinness Storehouse, that best suited each of these places. So there was there is a book, a fantastic, richly detailed book with all sorts of history and images around the story of Guinness and Dublin. And there's also a range of fantastic photos of the brewing process in the Open Gate Brewery, or the old Open Gate Brewery. And so we went through a process of animating both of these elements to kind of further enhance them, so that when people held their phones up, as you can see here, just an example of the St. Patrick's Cathedral, they got this kind of rich interactive experience in that the book would open up, everything on the book would animate. They could walk up closer to it if they wanted to zoom in and see some very detailed animations and images, very high resolution, very high detailed model and image there. And the same with the Open Gate Brewery. They could look at some of these brewing processes. These were still photos, and we animated those still photos to create essentially videos of the brewing processes, so they could see the movement of the brewers as they went through all the various different stages of the brewing process. The fourth one I want to talk about is quite a detailed, involved one, similar to the Intel projects in terms of it was developing very detailed simulation training for, you know, a highly sensitive, safety critical environment. So we worked with Biopharmachem SkillNet to build an immersive and engaging aseptic training experience. And the idea was this would be for trainees to kind of get them familiar with the environment they'd be going into, to engage them in some kind of basic competencies and skills within the environment they're going into. And I think it's a perfect example of what I talked about at the beginning around this idea of collaboration between industry and academia. So there was a lot of deep engagement between, you know, my team and myself with the team on the Biopharmachem SkillNet side, because there's a wealth of information and various different situations that could be built or designed into a VR training experience. Our kind of focus was, because so many different pharmaceutical sites are so different, that we wanted to make something that could be used across all of them. So nothing that was too specific to a certain process or piece of machinery, but something that would give a good general overview of the broad competencies across a number of sites. So it combines a number of learning modules as well as practical training modules. So the idea was to kind of give people kind of refresher nuggets of information around biological elements and around some of the microbiology that some of these trainees should be familiar with, that would then prepare them when they go into practical training modules where they'd actually kind of physically move and engage with the VR environment to carry out a number of tasks. So this is kind of this is a good example of the kind of power and importance of virtual reality, especially for something like simulation training, that embeds this kind of combination of situated learning and kinesthetic learning, where you learn by doing, where the learning is embedded in the physical activity in and of itself, and at the same time putting people in authentic, realistic learning environments. So almost like creating an apprenticeship style environment where the VR experience acts as, I suppose, the guide and the expert guiding the user along. So we provided a number of kind of 2 modules in and around basics of microbiology and contamination sources. So again, broad range of nuggets of information that would then be peppered and embedded into the practical training aspect as well. So it was very important that there was a practical training aspect. But rather than throw people straight into, here you go, you're in a room with this piece of machinery, off you go and start using it, that we led people up to this. So from our experience and research, we know that there's a certain level of kind of onboarding and training for the virtual environment before you even get to that. So that's provided in this as well. But also when they start each of these modules, that the modules of themselves are scaffolding the user so that they're prepared very well for when they actually go into the practical side of things, because the last thing you want users to be doing when they're, you know, in a practical module, so you'll see an example where they have to do some basic tasks in an isolator. The last thing you want people to be doing is getting used to the controls or being unsure of what they need to do. So ideally by that stage, when they get to that stage, they're comfortable enough in the virtual environment. This is, I suppose, one of the problems with the VR simulation or using VR is there's always a training element to it, and that the more people use VR, the more comfortable they are with it, and the more competent they become with it. So one of the problems with simulation training when you're using VR is you have to ensure that you're not, if they're being assessed, that you're not negatively assessing them because they're unsure of how to use the VR world, as opposed to they are not competent in the skills that they should be in the VR world, if that makes sense. So we try and build it and design things in such a way that we mitigate that as much as possible, that when they get to the points of the process in the training, in this example here, that they should have a good level of competency in utilizing and using VR in general, so that they can move around comfortably, they can pick things up and they can engage and they can do all the basic elements that they need to do. So I just have some short videos, just very quick little nuggets, just to kind of give a sense of what it's like, what the learning environment is like, some sort of, you know, basic screens with information that is presented in a very kind of clear and consistent manner, that is then reinforced later on through an interactive quiz room, through these bits of information being embedded in the practical exercises. So that was just kind of just an overview, just the kind of room they start in when they start learning. Very few 3D models that are interactive, one or two appear, because again, if you put someone in a situation where there's loads of 3D models and lots of interactivity, they can kind of get lost or swamped with what they have to do or what they have to focus on. So, you know, we found over the years you need to present this in a very kind of clear, consistent manner where you build people up to it. So present a few simple little models that are interactive, slowly build up to presenting more complex models with a higher degree of interactivity. So for example, after they've kind of moved on from the first module to the second module, there's a range of other interactive elements through it, and the number of interactive elements increases a lot, so that by the time they get to the practical modules, they're very comfortable with engaging and working with various different 3D modules or models as part of the learning experience. So once they've kind of gone through that, and there's a range of elements to it, but it's designed again to be used in as flexible a manner as possible. So this is something that can be used kind of at the beginning of training, say, you know, get engaged, get interested, have a bit of a refresher using this, something in the middle of training, or even at the end, at any stage throughout. But again, never replaces, always enhances and augments. So by the time they kind of go through the learning modules, they are quite comfortable with the basics of moving around and interacting with objects, because when they come to the practical modules, there's quite a lot of that. So the first practical module that they will engage with is this fairly complex gowning process, whereby they have to go through a number of very clear, very much required steps in order to make sure that they are entering the clean room in as contamination-free a state as possible. And so in this situation here, there's quite a lot of steps, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of interactivity that's required. So there's about 4 different rooms to this that they have to go through and put on various garments and cover various garments and clean their hands and all sorts of elements like that. And we've kind of built, as part of the situated learning approaches, we've built feedback and prompts into the environment, so they're kind of guided all along as they go through. So this is just very, short example of one of the second room they go into, where they have to, just go through the basic hand washing process. While they're going through it, they have a video from the World Health Organization showing, the correct procedure, and there's kind of audio feedback. They soap up, they dry their hands, they then engage with putting on their gowns. And we also have later on as well a little animation as well to kind of reinforce that idea of how the hands are properly washed. And at each stage of the process, you can't ever skip a stage. You can't ever just move on and complete another stage. Every single stage can only be completed when the previous stage is being completed. So the point of this is, one of the, I suppose, weaknesses in virtual reality is you just can't carry out the same physical movement and actions that you can in the real world. You have to use controllers, even with some of the rudimentary hand tracking that is available in some headsets. It's still very basic, and it's not detailed enough to enable you to, say, engage in some of the finer grained movements with your hands that you would in a real live environment like this scouting process here. So it's less about learning the actual movements and actions and about embedding the operating procedures, the standards that you have to go through as you go through this. So the movements, the visualization, the videos, they're all there to kind of reinforce those. And by moving around and engaging with the kind of physical elements of it, you are introducing that kinesthetic element and kind of embedding those processes within those movements to help you better learn them and retain that information. And one of the findings in our own research and other research carried out, in various institutes around the world, is that VR is not necessarily good for teaching you new information, but it is excellent for helping you retain information for much longer. And a lot of that is down to that kinesthetic element, that if you design the environment properly and you incorporate appropriate level of kind of movement and physical engagement, along with a properly designed situated learning environment, there is a very strong retention of information that users or learners take away with them. One of the other kind of, just to show you some of the kind of other elements of the gowning exercise, is kind of going through and putting on appropriate kind of wear, sanitizing the hands at various stages, and kind of getting the prompts and feedback from the system to let you know when something is being completed. Because again, in early testing, we found it was very easy without this for people to get lost in terms of, I don't know what step I should do next. Should I go over here? Should I go over there? You have to be very careful that you don't lead people by the hand too much, because then you're letting the system do the work for them. But you need to provide an appropriate level of feedback for people to understand, I successfully completed something that can move on to the next task. Hence, you have the audio in order to provide a more realistic environment, and you have the visual feedback and the tick to say, yes, this is done. And then you can click on the door and kind of move through the environment in a kind of clear, consistent manner in each room. One of the, I suppose, the powers of VR is that you can kind of do things you couldn't do in the real world. So even though we're creating a simulated, realistic environment, modeled on clean rooms, to be as broad and generic as possible, every clean room environment will have various different bits of equipment, but to provide an overall general realistic environment. But you can enhance that. You can do things you can't do in the real world. And one of the things that came back to us from our engagement very early on was looking at what the trainers do in these environments. So again, a good example of this, collaboration and what this two-way flow of information and this dichotomous relationship between industry and academia gives us is, we had a good understanding of how the trainers approach things with their trainees, the little interesting, cool little things they do during training to embed that information in a bit more of a deeper way within learners and users. And one of the things one of the trainers said they did was to kind of impart this idea of how easy it is to spread contamination, something we're, I think, very much aware of now during these COVID times, but perhaps might not have been, a year and a half, 2 years ago. But people in the pharmaceutical industry and anyone who works in a clean room will be very aware of this. But the thing the trainers did was to say, to get people to put their hands in a box of glitter and get them to move around and touch things and see how easily glitter spreads. And just imagine, think of that as germs, think of that as contamination, think of that as whatever you want that shouldn't be in this clean room environment. So one of the things we did was, well, you can visualize in that VR very easily. So here you can just see kind of basic example is you pick up objects, you can press a button, and you can see how the contamination spreads from your hand onto these objects. Just some typical objects like vials, an EM plate, forceps and things like that. And this is one of the interesting things, I think one of the powerful things about VR is you can use it to simulate real environments, but you can also use it to enhance those in ways that you couldn't necessarily in the real world. And this, this kind of contamination view came directly from interaction engagement with industry. This was very much the idea of the trainers. The final thing, and I suppose I won't call it the most difficult, but the most interesting and the thing that took the most work was, isolators. This certain piece of machinery are used pretty much across most pharmaceutical sites, and there are some basic competencies that you want trainees to have before, I suppose, they're ready to be trained in more specific competencies related to specific pieces of equipment within specific sites. And this is the use of a filling line in an isolator. And so we had, we kind of iterated through this in numerous stages, whereby the kind of first version was very basic, wasn't very realistic, and then the impact on the learners and the trainers, as was fed back to us by industry, was, this isn't detailed enough, this doesn't provide enough of a realistic environment, and really doesn't benefit the learners in the ways that we would like. So iterating through this in various stages, coming to the kind of final version that models as accurately as possible a filling line in an isolator and some of the basic tasks, provide that level of detail and provide that embedded learning for the user who's carrying out these basic tasks here. And again, everything they do is kind of signposted and explained with UI elements embedded in the environment. So you can see there, it's kind of very clear about what they have to do, gives clear instructions. They're able to engage and move around the environment in a realistic manner, use the equipment in a realistic manner, and complete a number of basic tasks as they would be required to do within an isolator filling line environment, again, before they move on to, say, more specific, more detailed site-specific tasks. So they're the kind of four main case studies, I think, to give a kind of broad overview. All of those were carried out with deep engagement throughout all projects with industry, and I think there are good examples of our overall general approach and how we kind of leverage our our learning outcomes, our knowledge from our research that we do, but also from the wide range of subjects that we teach at various different levels, and how we're able to bring that expertise to bear in a wide range of situations for a wide range of diverse projects. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Brian. I was smiling when you brought up the In-Flight Dublin project and the airline seats. I remember collecting those seats with you and bringing them back to TU Dublin, and the looks we got carrying them through the Angel Street building. So
it was very fortunate actually that we got those, because it really cut down on, getting access to airplane seats in the realistic environment would have been next to impossible, or would have been taking weeks and weeks. So, something like that, don't want to blow TU Dublin's horn too much, but it was something we were able to get very quickly by picking up the phone and had within a matter of days, and it accelerated the project in a way we hadn't anticipated at the beginning.
Yeah, very much so. So thank you very much, Brian. So as you can see, the lab has worked on quite a variety and some very interesting projects. And speaking of interesting projects, next up, we're going to speak to Jackie Carroll, who is the founder of GIA. So Jackie, thanks again for taking the time out to be with us this morning. You might introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, and then I might just follow up with a few questions around the engagement. Thank you.
Sure. So thanks very much. And hi guys, I'm Jackie Carroll, and I'm the founder of Genie in a Headset, your intelligent meditation solution. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the project and the company and what we're doing. So for years, one of the greatest solutions to everyday stress has been meditation. But one of the things that we found was, in really high stressed environments, getting into meditation really quickly sometimes isn't really good for a lot of people, and they can't get into that zone, so they can't de-stress. So they find that more time is needed, especially for beginners. So when we looked at Genie in a headset, we decided, we really wanted a new approach to meditation. And this is where we developed an intelligent meditation solution that allowed even beginners to bring the relaxation to the next level. We then said, right, we're going to use virtual reality with data-driven insights that we can create tailored meditation experiences for every customer. So what exactly is Genie in a headset? Well, we essentially are a wellbeing platform that provides a combination of virtual reality meditation environments and visualization experiences, which is fueled by lots and lots of data that allow the app to show the user's progress, give tips and suggestions, and provide personalized content with different meditation practices that automatically adapt the session specifically to the user's needs. And this is a little bit about, the dashboard of what people would look in VR and how they would see their VR experiences. This is one of the skiing experiences that we have on the video on the right-hand side. And then just the actual app on the phone that would give the insights to the user. So when they did their meditation and visualizations, what they got back, we're going to be linking it to heart rate devices so people can actually see the stress levels decreasing. There's a community element where they can, have challenges and get badges. And that's basically it. We developed this project, and we started with TU Dublin with David and Brian on the very, very first part of the prototype, which has pivoted quite a bit. And from that, we managed to then go on and develop different prototypes that we managed to test inside of the likes of PwC and outside. And we're doing focus groups at the moment. And now we're ready to go on to develop our full MVP and kind of launch into market. So that's just a little bit about us. And kind of our project and what we're doing. So yeah, Brian, David, I don't know if you wanted to discuss a little bit about our engagement, but that's a bit about Genie in a headset and what we did and who we are at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jackie, for that. The skiing experience looks incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about how the engagement came to be?
Yes, so I think this was when when you guys had first actually launched Hothouse, and I remember receiving an email because I had registered on the Enterprise Ireland website. I was looking for funding. I'd had this amazing idea, and I was like, right, how do I take it from idea phase into developing my idea into something tangible that I could show people to get, a bit of investment so that I could actually go and develop this into a product. And it was the launch day of Hothouse that I was invited to. And I came around and I met yourself and I met Brian, and we started talking about this. And I remember I was on a really tight time constraint because I had been invited to Canada to go and present my prototype, which I just didn't have. And I was like, what am I going to do? But you guys moved so swiftly, like we spoke about. We met and you said, right, contact me. Let's see what we can do. And you know what? My experience with you guys have been like out of this world, because if it wasn't for yourself and Brian and really just understanding firstly my idea, helping me bring it to fruition and getting it ready in time for me to actually get on that plane to go to Canada to raise a bit of investment so that we could then, develop what we have now, was just absolutely incredible. So that's kind of how it started, and when I first came across you guys, yeah.
Yeah, no, we were delighted to meet you. I remember that day quite well, and we were laughing. So we got you in as quick as we possibly could. Can you tell us, Jackie, what the output of that project was?
The output, well, I suppose we managed to put together, the first part of a visualization or a first part of the concept into virtual reality. And I remember us scrambling around to get it into the computer and onto the headset. And it was really I suppose it was more proof of concept and a very mini kind of prototype that we managed to develop. So Brian, we went into the studio and he did a computer generated visualization experience in virtual reality that then, I was able to take over and showcase to the people over in Canada to show this is what we're thinking, this is what you can experience. So yeah, it was the mini prototype at that stage, or the proof of concept that we got out. Yeah.
Very good, yeah. And what difference did it make to the business, that having that prototype?
Well, it was huge because it was the whole reason why we got our, first round of funding, was using that prototype. It wasn't just my idea anymore, it was something more tangible. And I don't think if I had that, I don't think we would anywhere be where we are at the moment. So it was crucial, absolutely crucial, yeah.
Very good, yeah. And Jackie, how did you fund this particular project? Might be of interest to the viewers.
Sure. So there was, I went and applied for innovation voucher, and with the innovation voucher, that's kind of how we managed to progress with this. And then from the innovation voucher, obviously, then we went on to get the small amount of funding. And now, obviously, we're looking for the biggest sort of seed round. But it was through the innovation vouchers that we started this project with.
Very good, yeah. And Jackie, can you tell us what your experience of working with TU Dublin was like?
Well, brilliant. Like I said from the beginning, you guys were like total lifesavers to me. The most important thing, which I was really impressed by, is that you got what I wanted to do immediately. There was no trying to explain. The communication was very clear. You managed my expectations of what we could do in the timeline, which was absolutely brilliant. But the collaboration with you guys was amazing. It was as if you were a part of my team right from the beginning, my whole founding team, which was great. And I love that because I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And obviously the process with the innovation voucher and how to raise that. And if there were any questions, you guys were just absolutely amazing. So the communication and just the level in terms of Brian and how he works with the guys and to just get it together, like they understood everything. It was just, completely, it was so smooth, and I was completely relaxed at every single kind of step of the journey, knowing that we would get it done in time, for me to go over and present it. So yeah, it was brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And it was a great experience working with you too, a real pleasure. Well, I know we have an upcoming meeting to discuss some further development work, so we'll have plenty of time this time. And I look forward to working with you again in the future. Jackie, thanks for taking the time out today.
Thanks.
Guys, before we go to our breakout room sessions, where we'll answer your questions, I'd like to mention our next event, which you are very, very welcome to come join us. So TU Dublin Hothouse, Link and Synergy invite you to join us in celebrating Intellectual Property Day on April 26th. So we're going to have an event highlighting how a strong IP strategy can help build competitive and resilient SMEs and help bolster Ireland's reputation as a global innovation leader. Speakers will take a closer look at identifying, protecting and leveraging IP assets for business growth, the business opportunities that can flow from IP licensing, and the range of options available to finance innovation. Speakers are going to include Professor David Fitzpatrick, the President of TU Dublin, Dr. Alison Campbell, OBE and Director of Knowledge Transfer Ireland, Chris Horn, investor, mentor and partner in Atlantic Bridge, and many others. So please come join us on the day. I want to thank you for your time this morning and joining us. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and case study and found it both enjoyable and informative. Please do feel free to reach out and contact us. We are looking for people to collaborate with and welcome you reaching out.